So let's do Sting in the most boring interview you've ever seen in your life.
Did they do the name association in this month?
Yeah, they were all this month. So there was 4 Sting segments broken up over 4 different shows. The Mike Tenay interview was broken up into 4 parts.
Because I liked some of them.
NWA-TNA pay-per-view number 54, July 2nd, Sting interviewed Mike Tenay. He talked about breaking in. He talked about like how Jerry Jarrett gave him his first opportunity in the business. He talked about how like he wanted to give back to the person who gave him his break in wrestling. Which, nice little interview. Nothing special, nothing groundbreaking. But it's nice to be like, I sent all these press kits out to hundreds and hundreds of promoters, and Jerry Jarrett was the only person who got in touch when I was finally trying to break into the business with Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior. And it was cool to be like, and now I'm paying back that favor. Which is pretty cool. I thought the first one was the best of them. The rest were like, he said nothing.
Okay, I disagree because I think the second one's the best.
So yeah, NWA-TNA pay-per-view number 53, Sting sat down with Mike Tenay again, and he was doing word association. So he was talking about his favorite opponent, which he said was Ric Flair, his favorite match, which he said was the Great American Bash 1990 match against Flair, and then he did word association.
Okay.
Where
just before we get into the word association, the reason I like this is because he takes like a minute on each name because he's like, how do I not call them a piece of shit?
Yep, he is very nice, too nice, frankly, for this interview to be interesting. But
the funny thing about it is, you can tell him like I'm trying to think of something nice to say, which makes it funny and why I like the interview, because he clearly doesn't like any of these people.
But like my absolute favorite part is he clearly took a lot longer to answer than was actually aired. Because if you watch the one where Mike Tenay says Bret Hart and Sting responds, great finishing hold, when Mike Tenay says Bret Hart, his mouth doesn't move. So like it's either a bad edit or there was like so long between the gap when Mike Tenay said it and Sting like actually responded that like they just couldn't make it work. It's like, God. It was like your standard 2-camera shoot where there was a camera on Tenay and Sting and a camera on Sting, so they cut between the shots. But they had the camera on Tenay and Sting when you heard the words Bret Hart, and watch very closely, Mike Tenay's mouth doesn't move. In fact, Mike Tenay barely moves at all. I had to check to make sure it wasn't a still image or he wasn't edited in.
It'd be funnier if it wasn't even Bret Hart that they said. It was just like, he was like, Jushin Liger.
Yeah, Petey Williams. It's like, oh, great finishing hold.
Yeah, the Warrior one is very funny. I like the Vince to Hogan one. But that was pretty good.
Yeah, because he said Piper, where he said talented character. He said Warrior, which he said very bizarre.
After a big pause.
Very, very, very long pause before he said anything about Warrior. Yeah, Vince, he said best chess player of all time. Hogan, he said best chess player of all time, and then chuckled.
That was the only time that there wasn't a cut. Because like it was like one after the other. Vince, Hogan.
And then Mike Tenay asks him, which I thought was quite interesting because this is a talking point that still exists in wrestling today. But he was asking him about like the effect the internet has had on wrestling. And Sting responded, "It's good and bad, it really is. I really stopped paying attention to the internet. Even when most everyone was saying really good things about me, there are always going to be people saying bad things about you. The people who do that, some of them all they know is how..." God damn it, Sting, your speech patterns are so infuriating. Some of them, all they know how to do is rip it apart. Why do you watch? You watch because you love it. So start writing good things about it.
Okay, so I want to address something with this. I think he is right. I think there is a lot of good and a lot of bad. And I think if he is referring to the people that we would see on Twitter nowadays who go into people's things and they just rip them into and talk shit and like say shit just to get the hot take or to tear someone down that they don't like or be a part of some damn fucking culture war between companies as we see what's happening right now. Like if it's that, I get it. And like that's who I think he's talking about, because if he's talking about like Meltzer or something, giving a bad match review, that's stupid. Get over it. That's how wrestling works. There's always going to be pundits who want to talk about it, because if people don't want to talk about it, then guess what? It kind of fucking dies. You need this sort of back and forth involvement with it, because otherwise, what is the point of it? It's not going to be anything. There'll be no community. There'll be no fan base. There's no room for growth.
And before you continue your rant, I must say, and I always say it, good art gets better the more you examine it. If something is really, really good, we talked about the Raven and Shane Douglas stuff. If something is good and interesting, the more you talk about it, the more you should be able to discover it, the more interesting it should become. This idea that like, oh, you're picking holes in it. If there are the holes to pick, we'll pick them. If something's really good, we won't.
And also, don't take offense to it. Like, I get it, it's your thing. You literally went out there and put your, like, I guess, because wrestling's a different thing where it's like, other art forms, whatever, you pick holes in it, it's all subjective, and it's subjective with wrestling, but I get there's a personal attachment to it because you're literally putting your life on the line when you go out there and do your art. So I get it. You're going to be protective over it. I think the whole thing too is when it's legitimate and when it's authentic, there's no problem with it. And you have to be able to separate that from people who are just vindictive and have bad faith arguments and who are just trying to get a rise out of you. And I get it. It must suck, especially in this day and age with everyone on Twitter and everyone rips into everyone, which is why I think most of the time you should just fucking log out and just post your links to your t-shirts, post your links to your upcoming matches, and log out. Honestly, once you've reached that point.
In Sting's era, like, fans didn't have access to Sting. Like, if the only way Sting would be able to find out what fans were saying about him online is if he actively went and checked. Whereas in this era, where, like, we have social media, and, like, wrestlers are human beings who should be allowed to use social media without having to...
And it's a direct contact to these people, too. It's not just I'm going to write a review on something, and then they might see my review. You know? It's... I can @ them and it will go directly to their phone.
Yes, if I have enough followers, they'll get a goddamn notification for it. If I really want to abuse these poor human beings. But, like, it is that difference that, like, it's no longer the case that you have to seek out criticism for yourself. People will direct it toward you personally and, as you said, vindictively in a way that is... just like anybody who tags anybody in criticism, honestly, anybody who tags anybody in praise, I think is even still kind of lame. It's just like, I don't know, leave it there for people to find if they want to find it. It's the reason I honestly have no problem with people who vanity search. Like, people are all like, oh, they're a vanity searcher. It's like, I have no problem with people searching out what people thought about it. It's when they get mad about it that's a different issue. When people get like, I searched out this piece of criticism about me and I got gotten to about it, then you look like a spineless nerd. But you should be able, like, to Google your name and see what people are saying about you. That's healthy, honestly, if you want to grow as a performer.
Well, and to roll it back too with, like, just fan interaction, it sucks that we are in this, like, vindictive, mean internet space now, because these things should be good. Having this connection with these people should be great, because how cool is it that you can just interact with your favorites now and you can go back and forth? But, like, it's been ruined and it's been fucking perverse and it's been turned into this thing now that it's just so gross. And every day I think there's less and less of a reason for it now. Like, we peaked with what it was good for, and now we're just in this weird, gross space where everything feels like it's vindictive and pushing an angle and just not genuine. Nothing feels genuine anymore. So I'm really at the point now where it's like, if I didn't have a thing that I wanted to, get out there and be a part of and get involved, I wouldn't even have it anymore, because, like, what's the fucking point of it? It's just so gross and taxing, and I couldn't imagine being in the position of these athletes on national television, and just because you see some of the shit they get, and everything you do is so micro-analyzed now. It's like you'll make any sort of comment and, like, someone will take something to mean something, because that's just how it is with people. You're all gonna have different interpretations of what people meant, but, like, the problem is everyone thinks their interpretation of something is the right interpretation. Like, there's no world in which someone could have meant something else, or there was broader context to something. And it's really unfortunate that's the stage we're in now.
You know what the worst part of it is? The people you just talked about are the minority. And, like, significantly so. They're a tiny minority of people. But we have built platforms that allow them to be loudest. And that is partially our fault. Like, Twitter could be, like, 50 times better in the morning if they just got rid of the quote tweet feature. Like, one change they could make would change Twitter irrevocably for the better, but it drives too much engagement and they'll never do it. But, like, it's like, it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be the case that a minority of people should make a place worse for a majority. Why do we allow that to happen? Why have we built these platforms to allow that to happen? Why do we as human beings feel the need to constantly signal boost shit takes? Like, we can't help. I do it all the time. I'm not like, oh, I am sitting on my pedestal being like, oh, I am above all of the Twitter people. I'm amazing. I have seen through this. It's like, no, I quote tweet shit takes too. And, like, at least, like, twice a week I'll go to do it and, like, no, this person has like 40 followers. What am I doing? Why am I giving them, like, I have a considerably larger platform than them, not that I'm like a big shot Twitter man, But like
This guy. Whoa.
like, why am I giving oxygen to idiots? And we all do it, and we do it constantly, and we give considerably more oxygen to stupid people than we give to everybody else. We as human beings have just allowed these platforms to run amok with negativity and nonsense, even though it is the vast minority of people. Like, it's just a very, very loud, very, very annoying minority of people.
And, like, I don't want to, like, make this come across like I don't think there's a space for legitimate criticism of people online, because I think there is. People should be held to a certain standard. The problem is when it's not legitimate. The problem is when it's malicious and it's done to specifically hurt or make fun of someone. That's when I have a problem.
And I don't think it can ever be done on Twitter. Even in good faith, even in, like, the right mind, all Twitter becomes is like signaling to people around you that, oh, look, I'm above this person. Even if you mean it in a good way, it's like, oh no, I'm signaling to the world. Like, write a frickin' news article about why this person did something wrong and add, like, detailed context. There's no way, like,
100%.
a quote tweet where you're like, in this 240 characters, I'm going to tell you why you're bad so other people can slap like.
And the thing is too is like, I don't know. This is two people who have either studied communication or have worked in PR. Or
Wrestling Twitter is literally my job.
But it's like, I feel with everything you say has to have a level of snark to it too. Like, for it to bang, for it to go off, you know, it has to be a little snarky. No, like, genuine praise of something never gets big, you know. It's if you ever want, like, a point or a take to get off, it has to be a hot take. It has to have spice to it. It has to be a little mean. It has to be a little snarky, because that's the only way it goes anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I've written things before on Twitter, and, like, I'm a victim of it too. Trust me. Where I've written it down on Twitter, and I've written a tweet, and I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good tweet. Won't get anything though, because I know how it's phrased, and I know that it's not done in a way that's, like, targeting someone in this way, and it's not gonna. And people aren't going to go, oh, I need to retweet that. That's spicy, you know what I mean?
But, like, it values extremes. Because it's not just, like, spicy. Like, overwhelming positivity does do well, too. Where it's like, oh, that's the best match I've ever seen. And then all the people who, like, that validates their worldview will be like, yeah, that's the best match I've ever seen.
Yeah, but it's also the other people who are like, no, this is the worst. You're fucking wrong. How could you say this is the best match you've ever seen? This is objectively not the best match.
Which is the reason it encourages people to go to extremes. So this is the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. You can never be like, Michael Shane against Chris Sabin was a damn good little X Division title match. You know? You can never just say that.
How dare you?
We're 3 hours deep in this podcast. We can say whatever we want at this stage.
Someone's going to be like, respond to it, be like, actually, that was the worst Chris Sabin match I have ever seen. It's like, well, then fuck. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So yeah, that's Sting talking about the internet.
It's us talking about the internet. Well, you thought that rant was crazy. Wait till you get to the Jesus one.
NWA-TNA pay-per-view number 54. Sting continued his conversation with Mike Tenay. He talked about beating Flair, how Flair kind of made his career. Then he talked about Nitro and said absolutely nothing. Because Tenay was like, can you talk about your time in WCW? And then he was just like, oh, it's a roller coaster ride. It's like, dude, say something.
Yeah, well, he didn't want to say, I did a bunch of coke and then I got religious, you know?
I showed up to Starrcade 97 in very little condition to perform, and it was a bit of a train wreck, but it was the biggest match in the history of WCW.
Yeah, you know, he doesn't want to talk about that. And I don't blame him. He doesn't want to air his shit out for fucking TNA.
Yeah, and to be fair to him, he has been a lot more open with that in recent years.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's still probably a pretty raw wound for him. It's only been like fucking nearly 4, 5, 6, 7 years. It's like, as far as a lifespan goes, that's still like, you know, pain.
So, and then the final one of the month is the one about Jesus.
I mean, if you've ever been to a youth pastor, you've heard this.
You're not interested in Sting's conversations about Jesus?
Listen, I went to my religious school. I've heard this story.
He talks about how Sting is one of a number of wrestlers who's found God, about how his life was falling off the rails in 1998.
You know what? I won't get into my thoughts on Jesus, but I will say this. It seems like this was obviously a very good thing for him, and that it obviously set his life in the right direction. So fair play to him for finding something that managed to help him put it all back together.
And this will not be the first time we'll be talking about someone talking about finding Jesus on TNA television.
Oh, I'm excited for Vince Russo's promo.
Oh, yes. That one we may be a little more... than Sting's, I think, earnest embrace of faith.
I didn't know this was a thing. I just took a guess.
Oh yeah, Vince Russo does an I Found God promo in TNA. We'll talk about it.
Of course he does.